Guys, so let's talk about it, right? So after this debate, I have to say that, and after carefully thinking about all of the points that were made during the debate, I have to say that this was a 70-30 in the favor of Biden. And that's a pretty decisive victory, in my opinion. 70-30. I don't make that lightly. 70-30. That's a solid, unquestionable, in no uncertain terms, a win for Biden. And there are several reasons that I'm going to be going over uh, in a little bit over this. But I want to talk about how important this kind of victory would be for Biden, right? Because at the end of the day, the last debate, the last actual legit presidential debate that was between them, was a complete mess, right? We all remember it, shouting, yelling, interrupting, all types of nuts, right? And it was obviously on the Trump side more so than anything else, so it was a decisive. At the end of the day, just on that, it became a pretty clear victory for Biden. But there was a lot of skepticism in that, and I think a lot of what people held on to on the Trump side was this idea, this hope that if Trump next time lets Biden speak, he'll just trip all over himself. He'll just completely fumble everything that he has to say and just kind of forget what he has to say or something. Just mess up, just say the wrong things, whatever, and then completely blow it. But unfortunately for Trump and his supporters, that's not what happened at all. Like not even a little bit. Biden definitely came with his A game, and so this disparity, right, between the two debates, this whole crazy chaos, win for Biden, no chaos, still win for Biden, gives Biden such a major edge in this, that it's especially when it's so close to the actual election night. Like I mean, and with Trump being so far behind in polls still, right? And needing to make that gap for him to still appear to completely lose in a debate is like just death for him. This is horrible. This is political suicide. This was bad, right? Oh man, like I mean, I honestly cannot see how Trump is going to win this election. Now, after this one, I just can't see it. So, but let's talk about the actual things that were happening. So, um, first up, I got to be honest. In the beginning of the debate, I was thinking mostly it was 50-50. It seemed like it was pretty even. And it was mostly because it just seemed like they were both kind of talking nonsense. I mean, especially when it came to the foreign policy talk, right? Um, it seemed like both of them just didn't have much to say. I mean, if you remove yourself from the debate itself and you look at all of the facts in general, you can probably make an argument in saying that Biden has a better track record when it comes to foreign policy than Trump does. But at the same time, recognizing Biden's record is bad because generally Biden's record's also damning, right? Especially when it comes to the Iraq and Afghanistan war and things like that. Like it's just clear that he doesn't necessarily have just a great record on really almost any topic other than maybe women's rights to a certain extent. To a certain extent. Um, and so uh but beyond the outside stuff, just looking at this debate, they both were just talking nonsense, like talking about Kim Jong Un and China and things like that. They both were just making just not very convincing arguments for themselves when it came to foreign policy. So when they were just talking about it, none of that really mattered to me at all. I was just like, you know what, these guys aren't doing that well. So um, when it started splitting apart was when healthcare came up. And I didn't expect that because initially, I think anyone that knows Biden knows that he's generally a centrist when it comes to healthcare, and Trump is pretty much just a centrist when it comes to healthcare. So it was like, oh, here comes healthcare. Well, there goes another 50-50 talk of like the next 15 minutes. No, this was different. I mean, it was so weird because it was just like Trump had so much to like just have as layups, easy layups. Like he could have won that whole argument, the whole section of the debate at least, right? Because All he would have had to do was talk about all the things that people care about right now, especially right now, because healthcare is easily the biggest thing to talk about right at this moment in the United States, right? So if you were just to hit those topics hard, he could have really turned this whole thing around, but instead, what does he do? He stands there and he talks about nothing but Obamacare the whole time, right? And he doesn't even talk about it in a coherent way. Like, he talks about Obamacare, but he goes, yeah, Obamacare's bad, right? Which everyone expects him to say, right? He goes, Obamacare's bad, but we did it really well. We did Obamacare really well. But it can only be done so well, so it didn't actually do well, so now we have to get rid of it, just like we've been saying this past like 3.5 years or whatever. But just in case we don't get rid of it, we're still going to do it really well. What? What is that? What is that word salad? That's what he legit was saying. Like, it was just a big bunch of just words. It was like, is it bad? Is it good? Is it only good? Why is it only good in your administration? Like, what are you saying? Is it bad or is it good? You can't make these arguments like this. It doesn't make any sense. And you can't say that you did it really well, but now you have to eliminate it. Like, clearly not. And if anybody knows anything, you know that that's not really even something that he didn't have an opportunity to do. Like, he's talking about, the House being on the left and Nancy Pelosi and this and nonsense, yada, yada, yada. There was a point in time when the House and the Senate were red and he was the president and nobody came up with a plan. And just like back then, so as is now, he doesn't have a plan. And that was the big gap in this whole thing. That's where it became just a chasm between these two guys, right? Because at the end of the day, Biden was standing up there talking about, I have a plan, and it includes protecting this, it includes expanding Obamacare this way, it includes improving Obamacare that way, it includes addressing the flaws here and there, it includes centering Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act and maintaining it and making it better, right? And he talks about it. Biden talks about it. Trump talks about nothing but Obamacare. That's all he talks about. He doesn't talk about his own plan. He has no plan. And so it's just like, it don't even matter how incremental Biden's plan is. Incremental ends up looking so much better when the person that has no plan also talks about the incremental. Like, that's all he does. You talk about, oh, look, it's making such small movements. Oh, this is bad. This is really bad. You're making nothing. Like, he has nothing. And so it opened up this whole thing between them two. And again, this was mainly stressful because this is like the biggest topic in the United States right now. This is the most important topic in the United States right now, other than maybe, people losing their homes, which I'm surprised that wasn't a question that I saw, at least. People like the housing market basically coming to a close crisis right now. That's about to blow the hell up. but yeah, so that's how they talked about this, and only one of them two managed to talk about healthcare as if it was important. I mean, Biden literally said that healthcare is not a privilege, it's a right, which I didn't expect, nor do I really believe is his real position, but at least he said it. Trump didn't even say it, didn't even say anything close to it, he didn't say anything, right? And so if people are like, if Trump supporters are still like hardcore, hey, how do I say this? Trump says what he means or whatever. Well, if he's not saying it, then he doesn't really mean it, right? So, like, he doesn't really care. Like, that's the problem on that one. So that was a haymaker win for Biden. And then they moved on to economy, right? And, of course, right away, Trump did what most presidents do, so I can't really hold this against him in particular, which is pivot straight to stock markets. Hey, look at our stock market. The best stock market in the freaking world. The best stock market. We made the stock market the best ever, right? And so they sit there and they talk about the stock market all day. And really anybody that pays attention to this stuff knows that in a country where the majority of the wealth, right, is owned by such a small percentage, the GDP, the stock market, all these things, they mean and affect people so little, so minutely, that they can just look at a board and say, yeah, that's cool, but that's it, right? That's great. People can earn money. I'm still living paycheck to paycheck. I can't spend money. I can't invest right now, right? I can't do that. I don't know how I'm going to pay for my light bills, right? And guess who talked about it that way? It was Biden, not Trump. Again, an easy layup for Trump to go, hey, you know what? We're doing great in the stock market, but at the same time, we need to take care of our people right now, especially right now. And so I have this plan to do this and this and this and that. Nothing. No plan. Didn't even address it. Biden comes from freaking the sides, just from the flank, and goes, hey, you know what? The stock market's great, but not for us. Not for where I grew up. And that resonated with people. I know that. I know that resonated with people. So again, he made a point that actually mattered to people, while Trump's point just kind of maintained his base. That's all it did. It just didn't lose him votes, really. It didn't gain him anything, but it didn't lose him votes. While Biden probably gained votes by saying that, right? And of course, as we're talking about both healthcare and the economy, we're also talking about the relief bill, right? The relief money, which right now Trump's getting some heat for, because he was kind of like, I'm not even going to talk about it. I'm not even going to deal with it until the election is over, because this election is the most important thing. I'm not even going to deal with it, right? A lot of people were like, that's insane, because you're saying that your election is more important than people's lives. But he was kind of like, well, you know what? And this was the crazy part. Trump, I don't know why he would say something so stupid. Trump goes and says that the relief bill that was passed in the House, right, and the Senate, and he signed, like this was something that he signed, he says it benefited Democratic cities and immigrants. That's what he said. He said that it particularly benefited, it was something just to benefit Democratic cities and immigrants. First of all, you signed it, so you can't just sit there and trash the damn bill. That's dumb. Like, you could have vetoed it, but you didn't, and you know it. So that's one. And two, it benefited Democratic cities. That was his major point. I'm going to put the immigrant thing to the side, because that was kind of like a random thing. Nobody was even talking about immigration at that time. But he talked about how that's the thing. Like, the problem with the relief bill was that it benefited Democratic cities, like Democrat cities. Think about this for a second. I really want you guys to think about this for a second. You do realize that you can just Google this right now. Right now. You can just... I'd love it if you'd even stop the video after I say this and Google it right now just to make sure, to confirm this. Democrat-run cities, when he says that, he's talking about the biggest cities in the country. He's talking about almost every single metro in the entire country. Almost every single one. From Seattle all the way to New York. From left to right, from top to bottom, everywhere, right? Almost every single one of them is Democrat run, even in the deep South. It don't matter where it is, right? It's almost always ubiquitously liberal run. It's a progressive town. It's blue. You will find, even in my hometown before, Nebraska, the biggest towns, Lincoln and Omaha, were blue in a completely red state. This is what happens. Same thing with Texas. Houston, blue. Like, that's just what it is. These cities are blue. But you know what else they are? Heavily populated. They hold the majority of Americans in them. They are literally where all these Americans live. So when he says, really, like, think about that. When he says, man, this bad relief bill, it helps out all these Democrat-run cities. What he's really saying is, this really bad relief bill helps out most Americans. That's what he's saying. He's admitting it. He's straight up saying it. Who who says this? Who does this to themselves? Why would you give yourself an L like that? Like, why? I just don't understand. He straight up said that, and I don't know how to make heads or tails of it. But either way, while I was still trying to figure this out, trying to figure out why somebody who is a president, who is a sitting president, would complain about a bill that he himself signed helping most Americans. I completely dumbfounded by this. Like, wow, insane. I just completely an incoherent point. But while I was trying to figure this out, Biden comes from left field again, and what does he say? He goes, hey, look, at the end of the day, big businesses were bailed out, but small businesses need to be bailed out too. He said that. Biden said this. Not Trump, not anybody else, just Biden. Biden said small businesses need to be bailed out too. And we need to make sure that they are bailed out. And we need to make sure we hold them up and make sure that they're supported, because they are needed. Them and the middle class overall needs to be fully supported. Biden said that. Trump didn't say that right after. He didn't say that at any point in time. He just completely didn't talk about small businesses and helping out small businesses. He didn't. He just didn't. So again, there goes Biden outflanking Trump in every fashion, including the economy. So whether we're talking about healthcare or the economy, he's destroying him so far, right? And then they go to immigration, because now we can get to the whole immigrants thing, right? That he just randomly threw out. I didn't even understand why, but this is when the moderator asks him about families being split apart and the stuff that's happening in the southern border, right? First, immediately ignores it. Trump goes, he just talks about a bunch of other things about how they're treated, this and that, and they're like, and the moderator is like, okay, that's cool, but again, what's going on with the families? What do you have to say about the families that have been split, and now we didn't even keep track of them, so they're like possibly split forever. What's happening? And he just goes, he just fumbles around his words, doesn't really say anything, and Biden keeps hammering him on that one, and he just goes, hey, y'all did split families apart, and this was wild. I didn't actually expect defending the point of splitting the families apart, but Trump tried to, by suggesting that these weren't even families in the first place. These were just drug dealers who were using kids, and coyotes, and all these other things, right? Which I'm sure very few were, right? But we know that these guys came as families. We know that we split them apart, and we know that we sent back some of them or just kept them apart and didn't keep track of them. We know this, and Biden knew it, and he made sure to say it in the most stern fashion ever. Like, he straight up was like, no, you split families apart. You did that. These were families, and you took them apart, and now you can't put them back together. You can't get them back together at all. That was you. You did that. That happened. You're not going to gaslight us, basically, is what he was saying, which is important, because that's exactly what Trump was trying to do, was gaslight us. So, like, again, that's a situation that he was being put in. So I don't know how to like help him out on that one. He kind of screwed himself on that one by making a random suggestion that it wasn't families. Like, he could have said, hey, this was a mistake. We needed to fix that. We should fix that. We will fix that. We're already working on that. Here's the plan. But alas, he didn't do that because there is no plan, and he doesn't actually care. And he showed exactly that here. He just kind of came up. I think he might have actually come up with that whole argument like on the spot. I think he just ad-libbed that argument, because he definitely couldn't defend it. Like, it was just really bad. And in contrast, Biden comes out and says, you know what I'm going to do? Because families are having these issues, and we're having a serious immigrant issue, I already have a plan that's already drafted. I'm going to implement, which will make sure that about 11 million immigrants get to stay. The ones that have stayed, the ones that have been a part of our economy, the ones that have been paying into our economy. And he made sure to mention how they've been contributing into our economy, including being first responders. This is huge. He's making sure that he's actually trying to mend this. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's trying to make sure he has he has people understanding each other. Like, these aren't just criminals, thugs, all these things that Trump is calling them. He's like, listen, they're not just that. They're not. That's not. These are just things that he's saying. What they are is what we have them be. Like, we have them showcase themselves as, because we see them. They're there. They're working class people. We see them. And so it's like, yo, Biden's really winning this. And if I didn't think he was really winning this at this point in time, this is when I have to get really serious about this, because this is really important. Biden presses him on this subject, and I don't know if Trump slipped, but he said some really messed up stuff. He was talking about how the people that are trying to get across the border, right? They don't go to court. They don't. When they come in, that's it, right? Because they're rapists and murderers. That's what he called them. He was like, rapists and murderers, gang members, thugs. That's what he was calling them, right? They don't come back. They're all this and that, right? Because that's what Biden was saying was what was happening, which is that they would be taken to they would seek asylum. They would declare themselves asylum seekers, and then they would go to court, and they would show up to court, and then things would be handled one way or the other. Trump was like, no, that's not what happens, because they're this, and that. They are drug dealers, they're rapists, they're murderers, they're all of these things. And so they don't come back. And the ones that do come back, and this is the important part, I'm not even kidding, this is incredibly important. I need you to pay attention to this. He said that the ones that do come back, he said, I hate to say this, but they're just people with low IQ. They're just low IQ people. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, so I'm just gonna say this, right? If you've never heard of the term ethnostatist or ethno-nationalist, I suggest you take some time and you look that up. There are people who believe in these things, and they are infamous. They are famous. They are infamous, and they, a lot of them have been banned from YouTube, Twitter, Google, all of these, not Google, but Facebook, and all these things, and all these media outlets, because they advocate for an ethno-state, right? What is called an ethno-state, and this is essentially their argument. This is it right here. This is what they make as an argument all the time. I never thought Trump would be so ballsy as to go beyond just dog whistling to your basic run-of-the-mill racist, but to make a dog whistle to ethno-nationalists. Now that's crazy. That's crazy. That's crazy. That's criminal on his end. Like, incredibly irresponsible. Because, and I want you guys to understand why I'm, like, I don't want you to think I'm just jumping to something. Oh, why is he taking this quote and going all the way up to ethno-nationalists? I want you to understand that this is the argument that he provided. He said that the people that are crossing the border, that are coming to the United States, they are either rapists, murderers, and thugs, right, that won't come back to court, or they are stupid. That's it. They have low IQ. They're just dumb. They're not as smart, not as intelligent as Americans. They're not as intelligent as anyone. They're just low IQ people. That's it. In other words, he's making a case for entirely eliminating immigration. Entirely. All of it. He's saying the ones that come in and don't go to court are bad people. The ones that do come in, they're not useful people. They're not useful. They have low IQ. He says he hates to say it, but he doesn't hate to say it. He really means what he says when he says that. This is what he's doing. He's advocating on live television for ethnostatism. Like, this is insane. Ethno-nationalism the president is advocating for. And I kid you not, this is a serious, like, like, criminally bad thing. Like, I'm not saying he'd go to jail for it, obviously. I'm just saying this is so immoral, such an insane suggestion to make, such a crazy thing to say, a wild thing to say, that I really don't think he could have said something worse. Like, he would have just, even him saying something that isn't disguised banter, if he was just saying, yeah, I'm an ethno-nationalist, I don't think that could have been worse than doing the disguised banter thing. Because the disguised banter thing is effective. Way more effective, right? It actually fuels ethno-nationalists. It fuels people that believe in eugenics still, that believe that certain people, certain races are smarter than other races, that IQ can be a determinant factor of whether somebody should actually live somewhere or not. This is what he's talking about. And I want you guys to recognize it and recognize it well, because it happens. People talk about this all the time. I can name you several people, right, that are both political commentators as well as just commentators, just people who talk, like philosophers as they like to call themselves, but really just commentators. These are real things that people really believe. They really believe this stuff. And so I think this is where he's going to lose a lot of people, like a lot of people. And I don't know what he's going to do. I don't know what he's going to do here. I think he's just lost the election with that one. Speaking of ethno-states, though, the very next topic that they talked about was race relations. And immediately he jumped to the 1994 crime bill, which, to be fair, he has a solid point on that, obviously, because Biden doesn't. Yeah, he can't defend that. He can't possibly positively defend that. And Biden did the right thing in this situation by conceding it, by saying, hey, it was a bad idea, it was terrible, and I've been trying to fix it. And then he mentions some examples of ways that he was trying to fix it in the past few years. You look up any of them, they're all very incremental changes. They're not real major changes. So this is not a real solid argument. So again, I would say that's a point to Trump, obviously, on the 1994 crime bill. I can't give that one to Biden. But then Biden fired back at him like, hey, with sort of a whataboutism. So it's a little less effective for me. With the whole, well, what did you say about the crime bill that you're trying to hold me accountable for? You said that the one problem with the crime bill is that it didn't arrest enough people. It didn't put enough people in prison, in jail. You said that. And that's true too. So I have to say that's to a certain, even though it's not super effective for me, I think that's going to be really effective for the American people to hear that he actually did side with the crime bill, and in fact wanted it to be even worse. And he mentioned the quotes for the Central Park 5 case, in which Trump was commenting on several times throughout his career before he became a president even. And that's, again, I mean, that's not going to be super effective because that's been going around for a while now, and Trump supporters are not going to care. Biden supporters are just going to keep supporting Biden, so I don't think that was super effective. What I did find very effective is when Trump got pressed on by the moderator on Black Lives Matter. When he got pressed on Black Lives Matter, the commentator was talking about how he had said a bunch of really terrible things about Black Lives Matter, which was true, and that this is problematic or whatever, and like at the same time he was posting things that have to do with white nationalism and things like that. So what does he have to say, basically, is what she was asking. Like, what do you have to say about all this? How do you explain all this, right? And basically he just kind of talked about how He was like, well, I I just saw really bad sides of it. I mean, these guys were talking about pigs in a blanket and things against the police and all that kind of stuff, and that's just the side that I saw about it, and it was just really bad. And she was like, okay, and now what do you say about all? What do you have to say about all this? And he legit said, I don't know what to say. he, he really said, I don't know what to say. I This is, mind you, this is during the biggest social movement in American history. Biggest, by far, biggest social movement in the entire United States. So big it goes way beyond the United States. Several countries have participated in this movement. This is huge. And this guy, the President of the United States himself, what does he say? I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. That is a quote. I don't know what to say. Like, what do you make of that? I don't know. But you screw yourself when you can't even, one day you're sitting there talking about, stand back and stand by to a white nationalist group, and then the like an hour or two afterwards, you go on Sean Hannity and immediately rebuke and like condemn. You just condemn all white nationalism and racism and all this, right? You condemn all that stuff. You just hardcore condemn it because you realize that the whole stand back and stand by thing didn't favor you. But then you turn around and say, I don't know what to say. This is when people like me wonder, like, and a lot of people wonder, is Trump really the kind of guy who just wants to win no matter what and he's willing to do anything for it? Or is he just someone who's really just a closeted far right winger? And it's hard to determine in this case because he says things like, I don't know what to say. Like, if you wanted to win, man, you would say that Black Lives Matter, now that you know about it, is an important thing to stand for, and social justice is an important thing to stand for, and that you stand for these things, that you stand for equality. That would have gotten you votes. That would have gotten you something. But instead, you go, I don't know what to say, in a desperate attempt to hold on to the few Trump supporters right now, the few supporters that you have that may just be racist. What a terrible plan. I mean, I don't know. But either way, this was such a bad plan that even Biden immediately recognized it and took advantage of it and said something along the lines of that this guy has a dog whistle as big as a foghorn, which had me laughing a little bit because it's like, yo, yeah. I mean, this dude's been dog whistling for a minute, so it's just like, I don't know what to make of it. All in all, though, this was just a major victory for Biden because of this. Like, Trump he just folded himself so many times that Biden, all he had to do was just give him a couple of taps as a finishing blow every freaking round. It was just a bad deal. And that is not to say that Biden or Trump didn't say anything important or of substance, right? Or didn't make any major, hits or whatever. Because I think in my opinion, I think his most significant quote in the entire debate was saying, "Hey, I'm not your average politician. I'm not your typical politician." This was when Biden was talking about, like, he doesn't want to talk about, he wants to talk about his family and my family. I want to talk about your family, right? When he does the whole camera thing and talks to people and be like, hey, he doesn't want to talk about your issues. I want to talk about your issues. I want to do this. I want to do that. Which is really cool for a lot of people. It can be touching to a lot of people, right? But then Trump kind of trounced that by going, you see that little thing that he just did there? See that, folks? That's just being a politician. That's what that is. I'm not your typical politician, and that's why I won. And that's a major hit for him. That's a good point for him, because that's exactly true. He did win by not being this politician. I don't know if that's going to be effective anymore here, though. I think the politician's going to win. Because you're saying some crazy things, Trump. Like, you're saying some insane things. Like, for example, you said something along the lines of something like Kamala Harris is worse or is more of a leftist, is more socialist. That's what she said. That's what he said. He said that Harris was more socialist than Sanders. Harris was more socialist than Sanders. I don't know. I don't know, man. This is nuts. I mean, this is crazy. Um, but either way, yeah, like you go through the quotes. I mean, there are some quotes in which Trump got Biden on, like the whole who made the cages, as far as the southern border crisis issue. Who made the cages? If he didn't beat that to death, his point would have been really a good point. And I still think technically it is a good point, just not as good of a point as why can't you keep track of kids? And just not as good, you know. Um, and so at the end of the day, uh, regardless of how you weigh out the quotes, throughout the whole thing, Biden was by far winning, and that's why I'm saying 70-30. I'm hoping that that's exactly how the vote, in fact, comes back, and I think it will be a Biden win. Honestly, I'm after this debate, I'm confident that Biden is going to win this election, and is going to win it handily. That doesn't mean don't vote. That just means, I mean, what's Trump gonna do? Like, that's just it. Trump is probably going to lose very, very soundly. So, yeah, just let me know your thoughts, and let me know what you guys think about this. And if you agree or disagree, or you think I'm within the ballpark or whatever, we'll just discuss it. Thank you.